The massive space station floated in the void, like a crystal flower vast, gleaming, and impossibly intricate, woven from metal and light. Vessels from dozens of star systems were docked at its petal-like arms, their hulls shimmering with alien technologies far beyond human understanding. This was the beating heart of galactic authority, place where decisions rippled across billions of lives and thousands of worlds. Captain Jake Morrison stepped off the human transport ship, his boots striking the polished floor of the docking bay. Everything around him was enormous, dwarfing Earth's orbiting stations by orders of magnitude. The ceiling arched so high above that actual clouds had formed beneath its curved supports. The bay bustled with alien life creatures gliding, crawling, or striding on limbs that moved in ways no human joints ever could. The air smelled of ozone and exotic chemicals that made Jake's nose twitch. He wore his formal dress uniform, dark blue, meticulously pressed, adorned with medals from decades of service. They shimmered beneath the alien lighting, casting tiny rainbows across his chest. Jake had earned every one fighting in the border wars, leading rescue missions through asteroid belts, and commanding Earth's first interstellar expedition fleet. But none of that experience seemed to carry weight here. Two alien sentinels approached, their bodies tall and lithe, skin like polished obsidian. Each had 4 unblinking eyes that studied him with cold precision. One of them spoke via a translator. Device looped around its neck. Human Morrison. Follow. The council awaits. They led him through hallways that curved and spiraled in ways that defied logic, making his eyes ache as he tried to follow their twists. The walls pulsed with shifting images, alien planets with purple oceans, cities that floated in iridescent clouds, skies that blazed with unfamiliar stars. Compared to this parade of wonders, Earth felt small, fragile, almost embarrassingly simple. Then they entered the council chamber. It was awe-inspiring, shaped like a massive bowl, layered with ascending tiers of seats that vanished into the shadows above. Representatives from 100 different species watched him from those heights. Their forms so varied, Jake wondered how they all breathed the same atmosphere. At the bottom of the chamber, a single chair awaited him, man-sized. Someone had made the effort to accommodate him, a small gesture, but it carried meaning. Jake descended the long ramp alone, aware of the countless alien eyes fixed on him. He stood beside the chair, but didn't sit. Military training had taught him the subtle language of posturous. Without submission, a being stepped forward, drawing his attention. It was both beautiful and terrifying. Its body looked like living crystal, light scattering across its facets, like a prism come alive. With each movement, faint musical tones drifted from its joints, like wind chimes caught in a breeze. When it spoke through the translator, its voice was soft but resonant. "I am Ambassador Kefir of the Zurati Empire," it said. "I speak for this council in welcoming the human species to these proceedings." Jake nodded with practiced poise. "Thank you, Ambassador. Earth is honored by this invitation." A sound like laughter rippled from somewhere high above, but he couldn't tell which species had made it. Kefir raised one elegant limb, and silence returned. "Your species has achieved faster than light travel," Kefir continued. "A rare milestone. Many civilizations never leave their home stars. But this galaxy is ancient and dangerous. There are rules here, Captain. Standards that must be upheld." Jake was ready for this. Earth's diplomatic corps had warned him newcomers were rarely welcomed with open arms. "We understand that. We have much to learn," he replied. Kefir's crystalline form shifted. The lights dimmed, casting jagged reflections across the chamber. "The Council has studied your technology, your military infrastructure, your manufacturing capabilities, adequate for a young race. But concerns remain." Whispers echoed from the upper tiers. Through the translator, Jake caught fragments, primitive, volatile, unpredictable. His jaw clenched. He kept his expression neutral, Another voice spoke, this one deeper, harsh, like boulders grinding together. Your ships are crude, metal slabs welded in orbit, rocket propulsion, basic computing. You hope to survive in a galaxy where entire fleets are composed of plasma and thought. Jake had seen the alien ship's elegant constructions that bent light, moved like flowing water, and carried weapons beyond comprehension. His own vessels looked like industrial machines by comparison. We build what works, he answered simply. Our ships may not be graceful, but they perform their mission. The gravelly voice chuckled, a sound like a landslide, spoken like a true primitive. But tell us what happens when your bolted-together ships meet a quantum disruptor. What happens when your chemical thrusters face gravitational weaponry? Jake felt the heat rising in his chest, but kept his tone level. We adapt, we learn, we survive. Kepher moved again, crystal limbs casting melodic tones. Survival alone is not enough, Captain Morrison. This galaxy holds powers older than your sun. Devices that could transform your planet in minutes. You may have potential, but you lack the wisdom to wield it. An uproar followed, dozens of alien voices layered atop each other. The translators struggled to keep up. Jake caught fragments, limit their fleet sizes, restrict their weaponry, isolate them until they mature. Eventually, Kepher raised a limb and brought the chamber to silence once more. The Council has reached its verdict. Humanity will be granted provisional membership in the galactic community. However, for the safety of all, the following restrictions will apply. Jake tensed. You are forbidden from building warships larger than frigate class. You may not access advanced weaponry without Council oversight. You may not establish military outposts beyond your home star. These terms will remain until you demonstrate sufficient cultural and technological maturity. The words hit him like a gut punch. Frigates were barely larger than Earth's destroyers. Without high-level weapons, humanity's defenses were paper-thin, and confinement to the solar system meant strategic isolation. Earth would be vulnerable. Boxed in, his voice, low and tight, cut through the chamber. How long will we be kept in a cage? Kepher's crystal limbs shimmered in what might have been a shrug. A century. Perhaps longer. When your species learns to build ships with elegance, instead of brute force. When your weapons reflect thought, not desperation. We will reconsider. Jake wanted to fight back, to protest. But centuries of human pride and pain coiled inside him, held down only by discipline. The galaxy had judged them as children with dangerous toys. He took a slow breath and raised his eyes to the thousands watching above. Then we'll show you. One day, you'll call our scrapyard ships legends. And he sat down in the chair made just for him. Humanity had reached the stars faster than most species managed to invent the plow, but none of that mattered now. Captain Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Council, knowing the verdict had been decided long before he entered the chamber. We accept the Council's terms, he said at last, the words like ashes in his mouth, as he left. The alien voices rose behind him, discussing humanity, as if they were arguing over the intelligence of a new pet. To them, humans were crude, primitive things, perhaps one day useful, but certainly not yet. They had no idea what they had just ignited back on Earth. Chief Engineer Lisa Park had been listening to every word through quantum comms. Each smug dismissal, every patronizing judgment, had only fueled her resolve. The aliens thought humans couldn't build elegant or advanced ships. They were about to learn how dangerously wrong they were. 6 months after the Council's decision, a secret shipyard on the dark side of Luna was alive with activity. Construction Bay 7, an engineering marvel in itself, was the largest enclosed space ever built by humans, vast enough to fit 3 city blocks under one roof. Inside it, something impossible was being born. From the observation deck, Lisa Park stood sipping what had once been hot coffee, her gaze fixed on the chaotic masterpiece below. Sparks danced through the air as welders secured massive hull plates, one seemingly from a different era or manufacturer. Some panels gleamed like polished mirrors. Others were matte black and jagged, absorbing light like chunks of void. It looked like a puzzle, where the pieces came from entirely different boxes. "Still think this is madness?" muttered Tony Hayes as he joined her at the railing. Exhaustion weighed heavy in his voice. He'd been pulling double shifts for weeks. Eyes rimmed red. "The aliens are going to take one look at this thing and laugh us right out of the galaxy." Lisa gave a small, knowing smile and took a sip of her cold drink. "That's exactly what we want them to do." Below them, the ship known as Defiance grew larger every day. At first glance, it looked like a disaster, a mass of mismatched parts scavenged from every scrapyard in the solar system. Its hull was a patchwork of alien alloys and human metals. Some sections bore smooth, organic curves, like Zerati designs. Others had the brutal, angular lines of military dreadnoughts. Weapon pods jutted from the hull at strange angles, some clearly added as afterthoughts. Dr. Ben Carter arrived at the deck, tablet in hand, his screen displaying schematics, so alien and complex they were almost painful to look at. "Shield generators are online," he announced. "Took some effort to make Zerati crystal tech talk to human processors, but it's working." Lisa nodded. "What about propulsion?" Ben's eyes lit up as he brought up another schematic. "That's where things get weird. We've got Corvani plasma drives as our main engines, Earth's fusion rockets as backup, and those gravity manipulators we borrowed from the trade delegation. That combination should tear the ship apart," Tony muttered, not asking he already knew it didn't. Ben nodded. "Exactly. According to every engineering manual in the galaxy, mixing those three systems should cause a resonance cascade and rip the ship in half. But it doesn't. Not only does it not self-destruct," Ben said, grinning, "it runs better. The plasma drives run cooler because the fusion systems handle heat redistribution. The gravity manipulators reduce stress across the frame by generating localized null fields. It's like the technologies weren't just compatible, they were meant to work together. Even though the species that made them hate each other." Lisa had spent over 15 years studying alien engineering since first contact. She understood what most aliens didn't. Every species designed technology based on how their brains processed reality. The Zerati built with crystal and light because that's how their minds saw structure. The Corvani relied on plasma and energy fields, having evolved near a sun. Humans, they used metal and chemistry because Earth gave them steel, fuel, and grit. But humans had a unique gift. They could think like other species. Lisa could analyze Zerati crystal arrays and understand not just how but why they worked. She could study Corvani plasma flows and see how to improve them. And when she combined that insight with the raw, fearless innovation of human engineering, the result was something the galaxy had never seen before. "The weapons," Ben said, scrolling to another screen, "are the real masterpiece." He tapped the tablet, and holograms flickered to life. "We've got railguns firing projectiles with Zerati crystal cores. The crystals charge during flight and detonate on impact, releasing stored energy. Plasma cannons use human magnetic containment fields to focus beams sharper than anything in Council databases. And the missiles," he paused, grinning in awe. "They launch with old-fashioned chemical boosters, then switch to alien gravity drives once clear of the hull. Each one carries a different payload based on target, energy absorbers for crystalline vessels, kinetic spikes for heavily armored craft, and, let's just say, a few surprises." Tony raised an eyebrow. "You realize we've basically broken every Council regulation in 6 months?" Lisa nodded. Her voice was calm, but fire burned in her eyes. "They told us we were too primitive to matter, that we were too reckless, too backward, too small to threaten anything out here. Let them laugh." She turned back to the growing silhouette of Defiance, ugly and brilliant, terrifying and beautiful. Because the moment they stop laughing, they'll realize we've already won. I can't even talk about this in an unsecured area, Tony muttered, eyes fixed on the growing starship below them. The Defiance was taking shape in the shipyard, an impossible beast of welded contradictions and defiant engineering. How are we supposed to explain this to the council observers? Lisa Park had been waiting for that question and dreading it. 3. Zarati engineers were stationed at the Luna shipyard under a council oversight mandate. Their job: monitor human technological development and ensure compliance with galactic regulations. So far, their reports had been dismissive. They described the Defiance as a curious, if misguided, experiment in hybrid design. A Frankenstein's monster of primitive engineering, unlikely to achieve stable flight, let alone survive combat. The aliens saw the mixed hull alloys and assumed incompetence. They noted the asymmetrical weapon placements and chalked it up to poor planning. We don't explain anything, Lisa said finally. We let them keep thinking we're too backward to be a threat. Tony frowned, confused. When they file their reports saying we built a ship that can't possibly work, Lisa continued, the council will dismiss us completely. That's exactly what we want. Commander Amy Walsh appeared at the top of the stairs. Her uniform sharp, despite the brutal hours she'd been working. Crew assignments are finalized, she said, clipboard in hand. Steve Kim's our pilot, fastest reflexes in the fleet. He's been running sims on the new control interface and nailed every scenario. Carlos Mendez is weapons. He's the only one we've got with hands-on experience in both human and alien combat systems. And Nina Roberts is on comms. Her language skills are off the charts. She's already figured out how to piggyback on council channels without triggering alarms. Lisa nodded in approval. Each crew member had been selected not just for technical skill, but for flexibility, people who could think beyond traditional training. Defiance wouldn't just need expertise. It would need ingenuity. What about tactical systems? Amy asked. Ben Carter pulled up yet another schematic on his tablet, grinning like a man who knew just how insane the next part sounded. Here's where we went full chaos mode. Most council ships use centralized command systems: one bridge, one core, one brain. Knock it out, the whole thing goes dead. He zoomed in on the diagram, revealing clusters of nodes throughout the ship. We distributed our control systems. Every major section has independent processors, backups, and emergency overrides. If the bridge gets hit, Amy can command from engineering. If engineering's gone, Carlos can launch countermeasures from the weapons bay. They'll call that redundant, Tony said, half amused. Inefficient. Exactly, Lisa replied. They'll laugh at it in their reports. Say we don't understand proper design principles. But what we've built is a ship that won't die just because you take out one room. Below them, the shipyard shifted into its next rotation. Day crew clocked out. Night crew filed in. But the Defiance never slept. Hull plates were welded through the night. Systems were installed, tested, recalibrated. Piece by mismatched piece. The ship was becoming real, and the Zarati observers watched it all with growing amusement. Their reports to the council painted a picture of a species reaching far beyond its capabilities. Humans, they wrote, clearly lacked the sophistication to understand how incompatible technologies simply couldn't coexist. What they didn't understand, what no one in the galaxy had yet realized, was that humanity had spent its entire history doing exactly that. They had taken fragments of languages from across the globe and formed new dialects, new cultures. They had combined mechanical engines and digital logic. Stone and steel, ideas from empires long fallen and civilizations just rising. They had built wonders out of contradiction and chaos. They had turned patchwork into power. Defiance was just the latest expression of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to make broken things work together, to take the shattered, the discarded, the incompatible, and forge something beautiful, terrible, and utterly unexpected. In her private office, Lisa Park stared at the classified reports scrolling across her encrypted screen. Sightings, anomalies, ships seen at the edges of known space vessels that moved like they were alive. Whatever was coming, it wasn't council approved, and when it arrived, the galaxy would be grateful that humans hadn't listened. The Krillian horde had begun to after 5 centuries of silence. Their reawakening wasn't a border dispute or a political maneuver. It was the cold return of an ancient hunger, and when the day came, when the skies blackened and the stars blinked out, the galaxy would learn a hard truth. Humanity didn't build impossible ships because they were ignorant of better methods. They built them because impossible was exactly what the future required. The emergency alert came at 347 Galactic Standard Time throughout the galaxy. Communication networks flared to life in a frenzy of red-coded signals. Panic swept through military channels, diplomatic networks, and civil broadcasts. Reports flooded in from the Outer Rim territories, fragmented, terrified, and short-lived. The Krillian horde had returned, and they were hungry. On board the flagship of the Zerati Imperial Navy, Admiral Zethorn stood frozen before a tactical display that was updating far too quickly. 3 red markers pulsed where entire colonies had once existed, now silent. No distress calls, no evacuation signals, just absence. Gone. "Show me the recon data," he said, his crystalline voice tight with dread. The display shifted. Grainy. Footage from the last probe to escape the Kepler-7 system filled the air in shimmering blue light. They saw them. The bio-ships. Each one was massive, planet-sized monstrosities that defied engineering and sanity. These were not machines. They were living things. Their hulls pulsed and rippled, alive with organic systems that shimmered with dark energy. Beneath their vast, fleshy underbellies hung feeding tendrils the width of skyscrapers, burrowing into planets and siphoning life itself. "Estimated numbers?" Zethorn asked, barely breathing. 20 confirmed. The intelligence officer replied grimly. "Possibly more. Some data suggests double that." They moved through space as if it were liquid, ignoring inertia, gravity, even light speed limitations. "Our energy weapons have no effect. Their hides absorb or redirect everything we throw at them," Zethorn had commanded through wars, uprisings, and pirate invasions. But this wasn't war. The Krillians weren't trying to conquer territory. They weren't looting resources. They were devouring the galaxy, across the stars. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session in the Grand Chamber, carved into a hollowed asteroid and ringed with representatives from 100 worlds. Chaos reigned. Voices overlapped in panic. Translations struggled to keep pace. Everyone had opinions. No one had answers. At the podium, Counselor Ithra of the Hegemony waved her tentacles in protest. "Our fleets are already committed to border defense. We cannot abandon our systems to chase these nightmares across the stars." The Corvani representative followed, voice sharp with exasperation. "Our vessels require heavy maintenance between hyperspace jumps. A full-scale deployment would cripple our readiness for months. This isn't sustainable." At the center of it all, Ambassador Keffer of the Zerati sat still, his crystal body refracting light into harsh angles. He listened in stony silence as excuses piled like rubble on a collapsed building. He had seen this before. 3,000 years ago, the galaxy had only barely survived the Krillian invasion, and only by forming an unprecedented coalition of military powers. Now, as the threat rose again, his fellow diplomats spoke more of fuel shortages than extinction. Finally, Keffer stood. "The Zerati Navy will engage the enemy at the Vorthik system," he announced. "Our fleets are en route, but we cannot hold the line alone." A wave of whispers swept the chamber. Vorthik was a linchpin. It controlled 3 major trade routes, and sat on the edge of the Council's core worlds. If it fell, the Krillians would have an open path to the galactic heart. What of the newer species? Someone asked from the upper galleries. Could they provide support? Kepher's crystalline form shifted slightly, a gesture somewhere between resignation and disdain. The Altarians have only survey craft. The Centauri Federation is still recovering from civil war. The rest lacks ships capable of deep space combat. A pause. Then came the inevitable question. What about the humans? Counselor Ithra asked. A crackling sound issued from Kepher's translator like breaking glass, laughter, or contempt. The humans have one experimental vessel, he said flatly, and a handful of escort frigates. Their technology is crude, their experience limited. They could not hold against even a single Krillian bioship. But even as he spoke, a sliver of unease crept through his mind. The humans had completed their ship project on Luna far earlier than expected. The Zarati observers had submitted condescending reports, calling it primitive, over-engineered, and doomed to failure. But the humans themselves seemed ... confident. Too confident. And that, more than anything, unsettled him in the upper viewing gallery, seated quietly among the observer species. Captain Jake Morrison watched the chamber in silence. His hands were folded, but the whiteness of his knuckles betrayed the tension in his body. He had been listening. He had heard every insult, every dismissal, every casual assumption that humanity was irrelevant. But in the cold quiet of deep space, moon-sized nightmares devoured entire worlds. Jake knew what the aliens didn't. The Defiance was ready, and it had been built for this. Captain. Jake Morrison could feel the weight of every eye in the Galactic Council chamber. Turned to him the moment Counselor Ithra mentioned humanity. He stood slowly, uniform crisp, despite the endless emergency sessions. His voice rang clear, unwavering. Through the translator system, Earth offers whatever assistance we can provide. A long, cold silence followed. Then, Ambassador Kepher's crystalline body began to shimmer and hum softly. What the humans had come to recognize as the Zarati version of restrained amusement. Captain Morrison, Kepher replied, his tone measured but dismissive. I appreciate your species' enthusiasm, but the Krillians have destroyed entire battle fleets. Your single, primitive vessel cannot possibly affect the outcome. Jake didn't flinch. He met Kepher's four-eyed stare head-in. Then you have nothing to lose by giving us the coordinates. The logic was irrefutable. If the humans failed, it cost the Council nothing but one experimental ship and a crew the Galaxy had already written off. If, by some miracle, the ship accomplished anything, the Council could claim it had allowed it. A long pause. Then, very well, Kiefer said, his body dimming slightly. We will transmit the tactical data, but do not expect miracles, Captain. These creatures devoured ancient empires before your kind lit your first fires in caves. 30 minutes later, Jake was aboard a fast courier, streaking toward the Luna shipyard. The encrypted package from the Council contained everything they knew about the Krillian bioship's movement patterns, feeding behaviors, and a long list of failed weapons tests. None of it was encouraging. In orbit above the moon, the used Defiance floated in Dakin, asymmetrical beast, part myth, part machine. Up close, it looked even more outrageous than the Council's observers had described. Hull plates clashed in color and composition. Weapon ports were scattered in seemingly chaotic clusters. To the aliens, it was a joke. To the humans who had built it, it was a masterpiece. Commander Amy Walsh met Jake at the airlock. Her expression, a perfect mix of resolve and quiet tension. We've been monitoring the Council transmissions, she said. The crew's ready. Jake followed her through the narrow corridors. The ship's interior mirrored its bizarre exterior, a fusion of incompatible technologies that somehow worked. Zarati crystal interfaces glowed beside human digital consoles. Corvini plasma conduits pulsed beside Earth-made wiring. It should have been chaos. It was, instead, brilliance. On the bridge, the crew was already at their stations. "Status report," Amy ordered as she took the captain's chair. "All systems green," said Steve Kim from the pilot's console. "Engines running hot and clean. Navigation set for Vortex system. Weapons charged and calibrated," Carlos Mendez added. "All ammunition types locked and loaded. Quantum comes stable," said Nia Roberts. "We're receiving real-time council feeds and Earth command updates." Amy turned to Jake, who stood at the rear of the bridge at the observer station. "Captain Morrison, your order." Jake looked at them, young, brilliant, untested, about to face a nightmare that had consumed entire civilizations, and doing it in a ship the rest of the galaxy laughed at. But that was what made them dangerous. "Take us out." The Defiance disengaged from its clamps and glided forward. Its hybrid engines came to life with a low thunder, 1-part plasma hum, 1-part fusion roar, wrapped in a field of warped gravity. It accelerated toward the hyperspace jump gate faster than any vessel of its size had a right to move. Behind them, the Zarati observers filed their final report. "Human experimental vessel has departed for combat operations. Ship appears operational, but is unlikely to survive first contact. Probability of mission failure, 98.7%. They were wrong. The Defiance emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vortex system with a flash of distorted light. The bridge fell into silence. The fourth planet, once home to 12 million Zarati colonists, was gone. In its place, 3 massive Krillian bioships floated above a debris field. Their living hulls pulsed with a sickly green glow, tendrils still slithering through the wreckage, absorbing the last remnants of life. "My God," Steve whispered. "They ate the whole world." Commander Walsh narrowed her eyes at the tactical readouts. The ships were enormous siege, over 4 million tons of living matter. Their weapons could dissolve steel and flesh alike. One of the bioships was still feeding, thick tendrils burrowing into the shattered remnants of the asteroid belt. "Distance to target?" she asked. 2 million kilometers and closing," Steve replied. "They've seen us. The big one is turning 30,000 kilometers away." Aboard the Zarati flagship, Admiral Zethorn stood on his observation deck, watching the impossible unfold. His fleet had arrived 6 hours earlier, but had been ordered to hold position. Previous engagements had proven conventional weapons useless against the Krillian. Losing another battle fleet now would leave the Council core worlds completely undefended. His tactical officer spoke, incredulous. "The human ship is moving to engage. Single vessel. Maximum velocity." Zethorn turned to his displays, then activated the external cameras. The Defiance, goodly chaotic, blasphemous to every principle of Zarati engineering, was charging alone into the maw of extinction. He narrowed his eyes and whispered to no one in particular, "What are you planning, Captain Morrison?" Admiral Zethorn leaned closer to the display, narrowing his eyes for a better look at the human ship. Up close, the Defiance looked even more absurd than the reports had suggested. The hull seemed like it had been cobbled together from stolen from freighters, scout vessels, and maybe even mining rigs. Weapon ports were scattered haphazardly across its surface. The engine output was uneven and unstable by Zarati standards, flickering with asymmetrical pulses. "They cannot be serious," he muttered. "That vessel will be destroyed before it even reaches firing range." On the Defiance's bridge, the crew moved with calm, practiced precision. Weapons Officer Carlos Mendez ran final diagnostics across the hybrid weapon systems. Communications Specialist Nia Roberts sat hunched over her console, intercepting bursts of alien signals from the Krillian bioship steep. Rhythmic pulses of organic code, likely a form of biological coordination. "Bioship Alpha is charging for plasma discharge," Carlos reported. Massive energy spike detected. Commander Amy Walsh didn't flinch. Activate hull reconfiguration sequence. What happened next made Admiral Zethorn question the integrity of his own sensors. The Defiance began to change. What had appeared to be a crude, patchwork hull and insult to engineering suddenly came alive. Plates rotated, folded, and shifted, revealing hidden layers and interlocking armor. Fluid geometry replaced chaos. The once ugly ship reshaped itself into something sleek, predatory, lethal. That's impossible, Zethorn whispered. Hull reconfiguration at that scale requires technologies we never shared. They shouldn't even understand the theory. The Krillian plasma strike hit like a small sun, slamming into the Defiance's forward section, with force sufficient to vaporize an entire Zerati cruiser. But the human vessel didn't explode. Instead, its hull absorbed the energy. Glowing conduits lit up in veins of electric blue, channeling the plasma along designed paths and venting the excess safely into space. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Park monitored the readouts. Hull integrity at 98%, she confirmed. Energy absorption systems are functioning perfectly. Back on the bridge, Amy allowed herself a thin smile. Return fire. Mixed payload. The Defiance's response was unlike anything the Galaxy had ever seen. No elegant energy lances or precise particle beams. Instead, it unleashed a storm of raw kinetic fury. Railguns thundered, firing crystalline core projectiles at relativistic speeds. Each round carried a disruptor field that destabilized biological matter on impact. Missiles followed, switching mid-flight between chemical propulsion and alien gravity drives, weaving like predators toward their prey. The Krillian bioships were evolved to resist energy-based weapons, absorbing or diffusing them through regenerative membranes. But they had no answer for this. The railgun rounds tore through the bioship's outer flesh, burrowing deep before detonating. Explosions rippled through its innards, wounds it couldn't cauterize, injuries that refused to heal. The missiles hit next, each one tuned to a different vulnerabilities, some disrupting neural clusters, others targeting fluid transport systems, and a few carrying warheads specifically engineered to interrupt the creature's biofield integrity. Carlos's voice was calm, almost clinical. Direct hits on Bioship Alpha, target showing catastrophic structural failure. It's losing mass and function. On his flagship, Admiral Zethorn stared at the tactical readouts. Stunned, the creature was dying. Dying. One of the very same Krillian monstrosities that had shrugged off the combined firepower of 3 battle groups just days before was now falling apart under a single human assault. How are they doing this? He demanded, turning to his science officer. Analyze their weapon signatures. I want a full breakdown. His voice shook, because in that moment, as a star-reading horror began to die at the hands of a primitive Earth ship, the Galaxy realized it had made a mistake. The Defiance danced between death and miracle. On board the Zerati flagship, Admiral Zeth leaned over his science officer's shoulder, eyes fixed on the evolving chaos. Tell me what they're using, he ordered. Several tense minutes passed as the science team ran full-spectrum scans, cross-referencing galactic tech databases. Finally, the officer spoke, voice tight with disbelief. Admiral, I can't isolate a single technological basis. Their weapons are operating across more than 40 energy frequencies. Simultaneously, Zethorn's brow furrowed. That's not possible. Humans can't, sir, the officer interrupted. Their munitions contain material signatures from at least 12 different species. Some of it's Zerategrade crystal. Some is Corvani plasma. Some we can't even identify. They've combined them in ways that violate every rule of system harmonics. Humans lack the sophistication for that level of engineering, Zethorn snapped. But even as he said it, the evidence unfolded across the tactical display. The Defiance had completely dismantled Bioship Alpha and was now evading the other two with inhuman agility. On screen, the human vessel spiraled into a dive that should have torn itself apart. It didn't. Its hybrid systems compensated fluidly. Zerati crystal armor absorbed impact stress. Corvani plasma fields flexed to maintain structural cohesion. Bioship Beta is moving to intercept. Steve Kim called from the pilot station on the Defiance. They're trying to ram us. Commander. Amy Walsh didn't hesitate. Bring us about. Carlos, prepare the special package. Carlos Mendez grinned from his station, hands already flying across the controls. Special package ready. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Mart. From the main gunport, a weapon launched more energy than matter, like controlled lightning, wrapped around a burning core. It streaked through space and struck Bioship Beta at the precise junction of its central mass and extended feeding tendrils. The effect was catastrophic. The creature's biological systems spasmed as disruption rippled through its organic matrix. It convulsed, its flesh liquefying as its own cells turned against it. Target Beta is destabilizing, Naya reported. Cohesion loss, 70%. It's dying. The third bioship, Gamma, saw its companions fall and tried to flee. It's heading for hyperspace, Carlos warned. Pursuit course laid in, said Steve. We'll intercept before it jumps. The Defiance surged forward. Its engine switch alien observers had mocked as unbalanced were anything but. Underneath their chaotic appearance was a design so advanced it defied standard propulsion logic. The ship bent physics, not with grace, but with brutal, undeniable function. Bioship Gamma unleashed everything. It had corrosive acids, plasma fields, gravitational torques. The Defiance absorbed it all, countered it, survived it, and then struck. Minutes later, the final Krillian fell, torn open, pulsing light, fading. Its biological core, disintegrating under firepower, it could neither understand nor resist. The battle was over. 3 Krillian bioships, once considered unstoppable, now floated as shattered, husk-dead things among the asteroid remains of a planet they had devoured. The Defiance hung motionless among them. Its hull was scorched, dented, and steaming but whole. Alien technologies still hummed beneath the surface. Cooling vents hissed as systems returned to nominal. Admiral Zethorn sat in stunned silence. A single human ship had done what his entire fleet could not. It had wielded impossibly fused alien technologies. It had survived attacks no ship should, and it had made it look easy. I want a full spectrum analysis, he said at last. Get me everything we can learn about that vessel. His science officer replied in a hushed voice. Sir, ... Initial readings show that the Defiance incorporates technology from dozens of species. By all known engineering standards, it shouldn't even hold together. But instead, he hesitated. It's perfect, terrifying, and real. A voice crackled over the fleet-wide comms, professional, undeniably human. Zerati Fleet, this is U.S. Defiance. Krillian threat in the Vortex system has been neutralized. Standing by for further orders. In the Galactic Council chamber, silence reigned deeper than the void. All eyes were fixed on the massive display screens. Footage from the battle played in slow motion. 3 monstrous Krillian bioships, each the size of a small moon, now drifted lifeless amid the debris of a world they had consumed. The chamber remained frozen, because the galaxy now knew what the Defiance had proven. Humanity didn't need permission. They didn't wait for approval. They didn't just build the impossible. They used it. The human ship floated nearby, scarred but intact, a patchwork predator resting after a victorious hunt in the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Keffer stood frozen at his podium, his crystal body dim with disbelief. For 3,000 years, The Zarati Empire had considered itself the pinnacle of civilization. Their ships were works of art, their weapons masterpieces of precision, their tactics refined through millennia, and yet a single human vessel had done what entire Zarati battle groups could not. "Show me the weapon again," Kefir whispered, his voice barely audible through the translation system. The chamber's main display shifted. Scans of the Defiance's armaments flickered into Vukatic, impossible energy signatures from a dozen different civilizations. Zerati, crystal core, powering human railguns. Corvani plasma conduits linked to subsystems with no known engineering. Analog. Energy and matter interwoven in ways that violated every known principle. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't orderly, but it worked with terrifying effectiveness. A stunned silence stretched until Counselor Ithra of the Hegemony finally spoke, her tentacles trembling. How did they combine so many incompatible systems? Our best engineers said it was impossible. The reply came from an unexpected voice. Across the stars, change swept faster than anyone had expected. Species that had upheld rigid hierarchies for thousands of years now scrambled to adapt. Civilizations that once saw humans as crude were lining up to collaborate. The Defiance hadn't just defeated the Krillians, it had appended everything the galaxy thought it knew about innovation. For centuries, technology had advanced in neat, linear paths, each species building on its own traditions, optimizing systems born of their own biology, culture, and thought. Humanity shattered those assumptions. They didn't refine the old ways, they combined them. Back in the council chamber, Captain Jake Morrison stood once more at the center. But this time, he wasn't defending humanity's right to exist. He was presenting a battle plan for the largest joint military operation in galactic history. The Krillian main fleet will reach the core systems in 18 months, he said. We have that long to build a defense force that can stop them for good. Ambassador Kier leaned forward, the facets of his crystal form glowing with renewed resolve. What do you need from us, Captain? Jake smiled, genuine, steady. Everything you've got. Ships, weapons, people, technology. And above all, he paused, the willingness to try what's never been tried before. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in recorded history, every major species would join forces for a single cause, and leading that alliance would be the people everyone had once underestimated. The galaxy had learned a hard-earned lesson. Never judge by appearance. Never assume the newcomers have nothing to teach you. Sometimes, the solution that looks most primitive is exactly what the situation requires. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not by being perfect, but by doing the impossible and making it work.